Hey everybody, Jared here, and today we are going to learn to digitize an audio cassette. And you're like, what's an audio cassette? That means you're really young. If you go, I know what an audio cassette is, that means you're really old. Anyway, so audio cassettes are really, really cool. They are linear audio tape transport devices that have data on them. Now, let's get started. These things are hella old. They haven't made them in a very, very long time. So whenever you start looking at a cassette tape, the first thing you want to do is you want to look right here. And if you look right there, where is it? There it is. Right there, you're going to see a little foam pad, and that is a good sign. If your tape doesn't have a little foam pad, then it's probably not going to play. That little pad is going to hold the head against the tape and cause pressure. It's called the pressure pad. And if it's gone, there's a lot of work that has to be done in terms of moving this tape to another tape. So the good news is this is probably going to play. The bad news is it's not rewound. And you're like, how do I know if it's rewound? Well, all tapes have what's called an A side and a B side. And the A side would normally face in front of you, which is really, really good. Also, you want to know how long the tape is going to be. Now, if you're lucky, the tape will tell you. This time it says 60, which means it's a 60-minute tape, which means one side is 30 minutes and the other side is 30 minutes. It doesn't mean 60 minutes per side. It means 60 overall. Now, when you're looking at a tape, so if you're looking at a tape, you want all of the tape to be on the left side. That would mean it is rewound. So right now, if I'm looking at this tape, which is at the A side, you see most of the tape is on the left side, which means I want to rewind it to the left side. You see how I pointed that way? That's the cool thing about tapes is there's something called a direction. Normally, tape goes from left to right. And when you're looking at the tape player, you're going to see a little arrow that points from left to right. And that's going to show you the way the tape is playing. So we're going to make sure in a moment when I put this in a unit that I'm going to put it in with A's facing forwards towards me. I'm going to make sure that the tape is in the left to right mode, and I'm going to rewind it so that all the tape goes to the left side. And that's pretty much straightforward. And you're like, you said that really fast. We're going to go over it in a second. Just know that the tape moves from left to right. That when rewound, all of the tape is on the left side. We want to make sure that the tape player, which can be in an auto mode, sometimes the player can go this way or this way. We want to make sure that everything's pointing in the right direction or in the correct direction, which means pointing to the right. Tape on the left, pointing to the right. And that's pretty much where we're going to get started. So I'm going to pop this in the machine. I'm going to make sure everything's set up properly, and then I'm going to rewind the tape. Let's look at the machine. All right, so here we have a TEAC double auto reverse cassette deck. Awesome. Now your tape player might look different than this, but mostly they work the same. First things first, I'm going to eject. Then I'm going to grab the tape and I'm going to place it in the player A side out. And if you're like, why are you doing B side out? And the answer is because I'm recording the B side today, so leave me alone. All right, now, if you look over here, you're going to see a little bit thing that says play, and that's pointing to the right, which means that this is going the right direction. If I were to go this way, it would point that direction. If I go this way, it points in that direction. That's why it's an auto reverse tape deck. Now, since I know it's pointing in the right direction, what I need to do is either rewind the tape. So because it's going that way and I want the tape on the left side, I press rewind and I let the tape rewind itself. And there it's going to go rewind itself. Don't worry, I can clear the counter a little bit later on. The last thing I want to look at is the way that the tape is going to play when it hits the end of the tape. And if you look over here, you're going to see something called reverse mode. In the first mode here, that means it's going to get to the end of the tape and then stop. In the second and the last mode, and we go all the way to the end, it's going to play the tape infinitely, which is great if you're listening to music. It'll just play and play and play. It'll reverse the tape, then it'll reverse the tape. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put it right in the middle. And what that means is going to play all the way to the end. And when it stops, it's going to turn around, play it all the way one more time, and then turn it off, which means that if I were to hit play, it'll play the full 30 minutes, turn the tape over, play the full 30 minutes, and then stop, which means it'll take 1 hour to digitize this tape. I don't have to worry about it, which is great. When I go to edit it, it'll be really easy afterwards to be able to see, oh my God, 30 minutes in, there was a big spike where the thing turned over, and there you go. We say turned over, but we really mean it's auto-reversed. Back in the day, we'd have to actually physically turn over the tape, but because these playback heads turn the other direction, it does it for us. So we're gonna leave it here so that when I go to hit play, it'll play 30 minutes, and then it'll play 30 minutes, and then it'll stop. And the rest of it is done inside of the computer. So let's head over and see how we actually digitize. All right, so when you're working in the Freedman Center, you want to make sure that you check the right audio source. This one is number 2, it's the cassette. And when I do that, now that one is selected. So I can come over here and I can play it into the computer. But when I use the computer, what I want to do is I want to be inside of Adobe Audition. Everything should be set up properly in Adobe Audition already. I'm going to show you what those settings look like real fast. If I come over to Edit, and I go to preferences and I do audio hardware, the things that have already been set for me is that the input device is called USB audio and the output device is the Dell monitor. So basically, I'm going to say listen to the audio devices and output on the speaker, which of course is the speaker bar that's built into the computer. So I click OK and we're good to go. Now the next part is relatively easy. I hit the record button. It's going to try to create a new file. It defaults to 48 kilohertz 32-bit stereo, which is more than what you need, but we'll leave it there for now, which is fine. I click OK, and it's recording, but it's not recording anything yet. It's recording nothing, which is fine. I can waste a little bit of data. I come over here and I hit play, and what you'll notice is that it's going to start playing the data. And there it is. The data is coming through. All right, now wait 30 minutes to record the other side, 30 minutes for it to record the other side, and then I come in here and I do my post-production. See you in an hour. All right, it's been an hour. Actually, it's been 26 minutes because that's all we needed off the tape. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm immediately going to save this file. So I'm going to come over here, File, and I'm going to save it, and I'm going to make sure that I put it somewhere protected. So always in the Freedman Center, save files on the D drive, never on the desktop, never on the C drive, always on the D drive in a folder with your case ID. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to make a new folder, and I'm going to make sure that it's got my case ID. I'm JEB2. Of course, you know that if you need to email me and ask me any questions, I'm going to come over here, I'm going to put it over here, and I'm going to call this my source file. I'll name it something fancier later, but there it is. There's my source file. And now that I've saved it, I can say, all right, great. It's saved. It's protected. Hallelujah. Now, what do we need to do? Well, a couple of things I want to do with this. And the first thing I want to do is I want to chop off the ends. I want to make sure that the beginning is where I want it to be and the end is where I want it to be. It's really straightforward. This is, by the way, Adobe Audition, which is the Adobe audio editing program. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to change my zoom level so I can see the beginning. I'm going to come over to the beginning. I'm going to play and see how the beginning of this thing starts. All right, it's playing, and all right, so that's where it begins. So I'm going to grab a little bit before that. I'm just going to highlight it like it's in Microsoft Word, click and drag, and delete. Beautiful. Now I'm going to jump all the way to the end. And if you'll notice, by the way, that when it ends, you're going to say, wait a second, it looks like it's skipping to something. That's because there was some audio already on this tape. By the way, if you ever are recording audio, always use clean tape. It's never a good idea to record over something. And there you go. So we don't need that. Let's see if the end of that little bit of fuzziness. So I can go right from the beginning of that fuzziness, and I can highlight it, and I can hit delete, and there you go. So now I have trimmed the ends off, and I can hit save. Now, trimming the ends off is always really easy. The next thing I want to do is I want to make the tape as loud as possible without distorting it. Now, if you'll notice, you're going to see these sort of waveforms here. Now, these could actually be louder, and it could magnify the entire tape. And we can do that very simply by going Favorite, and we say Normalize to -3 decibels. And what that's going to do is going to analyze the tape, and it's going to make the whole thing louder. It makes it louder, but not too loud. It makes everything louder. So if there was hiss on the tape, the hiss gets louder. But this basically makes the tape as loud as possible so that I can... Now, with that, you're going to hear that there's two people talking and one person's louder than the other. And there's very little you can do about that unless you specifically went in and went, this one louder, but that's a little bit overkill. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to save this as, make a copy of that. Instead of saying source, I'm going to call this source louder. And this way I'm making a copy of it. So I have the original untouched. And then lastly, now that I have this giant wave file, I'm going to make one other copy of it. File, save as, and instead of a waveform, I'm going to save it as an MP3. Now, MP3s are destructive, so you don't only want to save the MP3, you want to make sure you have the original wave file. And when I save the MP3, and I come over here, the default settings are fine, 192 kilobits per second is great. I click on OK, it's going to warn me, it's going to make it smaller, but it's going to throw things away, but it's going to be indistinguishable to the human ear. And then, voila, it's done. Now let's come over here and take a look on the D drive, in the JEB2 folder, and you're going to see there's a bunch of data here. Let me come over here and look at the file properties. I hate when it makes it a music file. Let me make it a general items again. All right, so now you can look over here, and you can see that our source file is about 500 megabytes, and our MP3 is 36 megabytes. And all I got to do is rename them and take them to go. And that, in a nutshell, is how you use the AV stack to digitize audio cassettes at the Freedman Center for Digital Scholarship at the Calvin Smith Library at Case Western Reserve University. If you have any questions, you can email us at freedmancenter@case.edu. In the meantime, have a good time.